Hey friends, welcome back to another video. I'm here to give you your March radar. This is a video where I show you all the books I'm excited for that I think might interest you too, that are coming out in the month of March. So excuse that I'm wearing the same jumper that I was wearing at the end of the last video. I actually don't know which video you've watched first because I'm just filming a few this week. But do you guys ever have those clothes? I haven't left the house this week and I just have been putting on, like, wearing my pajamas and then putting on the same jumper, going to bed, putting on, it just like sits on my chair by my dressing rack. So sorry that I'm wearing the same clothes, but this is a very cute jumper. Anyway, really excited for a lot of the debut authors that are coming out, as well as some really cool non-fiction in March. So let's get straight into it. The first one is Your Driver is Waiting by Priya Guns. This is I think quite pacey political satire. It says that Damini is tired every day she cares for her mum, drives rideshares to pay the bills, and is angry at the world that promised her more before spitting her out. The city is alive with protests, fighting for people like her, but she can barely afford, literally, to pay attention. Until the summer, where she meets Jolene, who seems like she could be the perfect girlfriend. Attentive, attractive, an ally, and their chemistry is undeniable. She's done the reading, she's gone to the process, she has the answers, so maybe she could look past the thing that's holding them back. Jolene is really rich. Not only rich, but white too. Their romance intensifies and learns. As Damini learns to trust, she does something unforgivable. So it's a political, powerful, blackly funny social satire announcing the arrival of a new voice. This is out with Atlantic Books, who are a publisher I adore, and it came out on the 2nd of March. And like I said, a queer, pacey romance set against a interesting sort of social situation with the process, the gig economy, work rights, labour rights. So very keen to pick this one up. Definitely would be like a good holiday read, summer read. 2 books out from my favourites at Fitzcarraldo. This is While We Were Dreaming by Clemens Maya, I think translated, I believe, by Katie Derbyshire. And this is set in Berlin, which is very topical that I was just there. And this says, Rico, Mark, Paul and Daniel were 13 when the Berlin Wall came down in 1989. They grew up in Leipzig at the time of reunification. They dream of a better life outside of the brewery quarter. They roam the streets every night, rioting, partying, running away from their fears, their parents and their future. They fight to exist, kill time, they drink, steal cars, play it cool, long for real love and true freedom. This is Germany's most ambitious new writer, full of passion, hope and despair. After just spending a weekend in Berlin and showing my mum around who hadn't been there before, and being with Tom, who is a walking dictionary for all kinds of knowledge, including apparently the history of Berlin, and was giving my mum loads of information and made me really crave reading a story set there. And this is 528 pages. It's published on the 30th of March. And it sounds like it could be a real good in-depth friend group saga with a really good political commentary to go alongside it. And then a book that I have a proof of that I'm planning on reading next is Porn and Oral History by Polly Barton. Polly Barton's first book, which talked about Japan and her experiences there as a teacher and having an affair with an older Japanese man, was one of my favourite books in the year that it came out, and I'm really excited for this. Seems like some kind of a left turn for Barton, but in any case, I'm really excited to read it. It's, as the title suggests, an oral history of one of the world's biggest taboos. It says it interrogates the absence of discussion on this topic that's ubiquitous and influences our daily lives. She searches for understanding and spent a year having conversations with 19 acquaintances of a range of ages, genders and sexuality about everything and anything related to it. Watching habits, emotions, guilt, embarrassment, disgust, shame, fantasy and desire are all emotions we think about. It unfolds before her the book she had been longing to encounter, not a traditional history, but a raw and honest truth about the things we aren't saying. In the spirit of Now Done, porn is an enthralling, thought-provoking, revealing and joyfully informative exploration of the topic that will always have an element of taboo. It's been blurred by Megan Noland and Sava Sams, and sounds like it's going to be so brilliant. And I love everything Polly's put out so far, and I love, have no doubts that I will love this one too. So you'll be seeing that in an upcoming What I'm Reading, I'm sure. Another pacey sort of romp style book, which I have mentioned before. I'm always in the mood to find those books that really toe the line between pacey, interesting, plot driven, and are saying something that keeps me intellectually and curious about what the author is trying to say. This is The Bandit Queens by Perini Shroff, and it came out on the 2nd, published also by Atlantic, and I believe this is up for the Women's Prize, I'm going to say. I think that only came out yesterday when I'm filming this, which I'm not that like keen to follow the prize, but I'm a fan by Sheena Patel. It was on that long list, and I love that book so much, and you should all read it. And I'm keen to read the Charco Press, which is one of the only like indies on there that I think sounds good as well. So anyway, back to the Bandit Queens. This says Geeta is a widow. Life as a widow is more peaceful than her life as a wife until the other women in her village decide they want to be widows too. She's believed to have killed her vanished husband, a rumour that she hasn't bothered trying to correct, because a reputation like that can keep a single woman safe in rural India. But she's approached for help in ridding another wife of her abusive drunk husband. Her reluctant agreement sets in motion a chain of events that would change the lives of everyone in her village. It says it's in, the comp titles are My Sister's Serial Killer and How to Kidnap the Rich, which I love both of those books for that reason of being really rompy and interesting and politically engaged. So definitely one I think I will love. I think I might pick this up on audio because I am sometimes interested in reading these kinds of stories to listen to them on a bad brain or a bad health day. One I'm definitely going to read in audio that I also know is on the Women's Prize list is Fire Rush by Jacqueline Crooks. This sounds like it's going to be similar to Opal and Nev and maybe Daisy Jones and the Six. It has that sort of musical undertone set to it. So it says, she lives for the weekend where she can go raving with her friends at the Crypt, an underground club in industrial town on the outskirts of London where she's born and raised. A young woman unsure of her future, the sound is her guide, a chance to discover who she is in the rhythms of the night. In the dancehall darkness, dub is the music of her soul, her friendships and her ancestry. But everything changes when she meets Moose, the man she falls deeply in love with, who offers her the chance at freedom. Their relationship is brutally cut short, so she takes a dramatic journey that takes her first to Bristol, caught up in a criminal gang and the police riots that are crossing the country, then to Jamaica where her past and present collides. It's blurred by Bernadette Evaristo and Caleb Zuma Nelson. This is a debut that I'm really excited for, and it's set in the 1970s, as the cover quite clearly suggests, and obviously talks a lot about the political tension and the race riots and all of the unrest that was occurring in various different cities at the time in the UK, and obviously then takes us over to Jamaica to discuss family history and migration and those stories. Perhaps it will touch on Windrush, and I don't know, it just sounds like it's going to be so good. And I think with that musical lyrical tone, I think it will be one that I will like on audio. A couple of non-fictions I saw over on NetGalley that I think will be interesting, like pretty straightforward pop side, but notable, is Untypical by Pete Warmy, How the World Isn't Built for Autistic People and What We Should All Do About It. I mean, the title is pretty self-explanatory. This is a book about neurodivergence and how so many people struggle with the wider world, how it is set up for neurotypical people. So it says that needless noise, bright flashing lights, small talk, phone calls, unspoken assumptions and unwritten rules is a nightmare dystopia for the autistic population. This book lays bare what it's like to be different, explaining with wit and warmth how exhausting it is to fit into a world that's not designed for you. So Pete Warmy was a person with a late adult diagnosis of autism and has spent a lifetime masking, and so this is how he explores how we can help autistic people in schools, workplaces and lives to create a practical handbook that will assist both autistic people and the people in their lives to understand a more inclusive society. Sounds really interesting. Interested to read about the sort of practical solutions that are suggested, which are things I like to talk about with my other disabled friends, but don't often reach sort of the city planning or infrastructure level of inclusivity when we talk about design for all. So yeah, I think this one might be an interesting audio read as well. This one I have on NetGalley, and it comes out on the 28th of March, and I haven't picked it up yet because it's obviously a really difficult topic, but I think it sounds like it will be quite pragmatic in a way that I will find helpful. So this is How Not to Kill Yourself, A Portrait of a Suicidal Mind by Clancy Martin. So this says it's an insightful, intimate, and sometimes funny insight of why the thought of death is so compulsive to some people, while demonstrating there's another solution. From a professor of philosophy and an acclaimed writer, based on his viral essay, I'm Still Here, which I do remember people talking about. So Clancy Martin has his own experience of suicide, has attempted to take his own life multiple times. And he talks about more like the mindset that people with suicidal ideation and active suicidal plans find themselves in. So it says he chronicles his multiple attempts and gives an intimate depiction of the mindset of someone obsessed with self-destruction. He argues for the vast majority of suicides that these attempts do not come out of the blue, nor are a merely violent reaction to a crisis or a failure, but a culmination of long-standing issues. He looks at the thinking of a number of great writers who have attempted suicide and details their experiences, people like David Foster Wallace and others, and a history of philosophy that has to say for both for and against suicide, and how people had reached out to him over the years of his own writing and discussed their experiences. And this sort of critical inquiry of suicidal ideation, I think, sounds really interesting. It's such a taboo thing to talk about, something I've written about a few times in my newsletter and have had a varying response to, and have spoken again. It's something that comes up in the disabled circles I'm a part of, but I think it's really important that we continue to shatter that taboo and sort of push forward and past that, you know, be kind politics, called the Samaritans type of discussion that modern and neoliberal mental health support has such a hold on wider society for. So yeah, I'm not sure like when I will want to read this, but I think I will want to read it at some point, if that makes sense at all. Again, on the health line, and something that I think was really important to me and a lot of people who watch this, is a new book on endometriosis. This is Bleed, Destroying the Myths of Misogyny and Endometriosis Care by Tracy Lindman. Tracy actually reached out to me on Instagram and asked me if I wanted to read this, but I just haven't been in a place because my own health has been in the absolute toilet, especially when it comes to getting care for my endo, that I haven't felt like I wanted to read this. But I think it sounds like a really interesting and important type of book on endometriosis, because the content we have published so far, at least in the mainstream publishing world, is either like practical handbooks, guides, how-tos, or like personal lyrical narratives about living with the disease, which all of those things are valid and important, but this sounds like it's going to be more myth-busting and straight talking and almost like investigative journalism in its style. So it says, have you ever been told your pain is imaginary, that getting better just takes yoga and the blood of a unicorn on a full moon? That's the reality of 190 million people living with endometriosis. This disease affects 1 in 10 cis women and uncounted numbers of others who are chronically underlooked, underfunded and misunderstood. It is improperly treated across the medical system, and gaslighting and discrimination are rife in endocare. So this journalist knows it too well. She's been living with decades, part memoir, part investigative journalism, and all in all a scathing indictment of the medical system that fails patients. I believe she is Canadian, I think, and I think this covers sort of her, obviously when it comes to medical systems, that kind of thing, but like she says, it dives into how all medical systems perpetuate misogyny, racism, classism, transphobia, fatphobia, and other prejudice. Also so important to note that this is going to be a book that incorporates the wide spectrum of people that live with endo and will be hopefully not transphobic, and you can tell already from the language that it's going to be as inclusive as Tracy Lindman can make it as a cis woman, which I think is super important, because again, lots of these, the endo to TERF crossover pipeline is way stronger than you think. So I think, yeah, this is going to be a really good one, and I invite you to pick it up if you are either someone who lives with endo or you're trying to help someone who is, or if you are in any way involved in the medical field, then please I beg you to read better books about caring for us. Okay, on to fiction. This one comes out at the end of the month on the 30th. This is The Anniversary by Stephanie Bishop. I'm pretty sure I saw my friend Rebecca talk about this, but I can't entirely remember. I saw it, not talk, but I saw it on her Instagram. So this is I think somewhat psychological thriller, but a little bit elevated, perhaps a little bit more literary. So it says that it follows the shifting power dynamic between an up-and-coming author and her older film director husband as they enjoy a wedding anniversary cruise. I love a setup of a book like this, like a thriller or a mystery that's really taken on sort of, I guess it's like an isolated close circle when it's taken on in a specific location, like this is all set on a boat, you know, it's very Agatha Christie, it's very tense, and I think I really enjoy that scene setting, so this is why I was keen to read this one. And I've also been watching so much content about cruise ships recently, so that also piqued my interest. So it says the novelist is on a cruise with her husband to celebrate their wedding anniversary. He's older, and when they met, he seemed ageless as all new gods appear in the eyes of those who worship them. He's a cult figure, a film director, but his success is waning, and she is on the cusp of winning her first major literary prize. Her art has always been overseen by him, but now it may just overshadow his. For days they set sail in the sun. They lie about drinking, reading, sleeping, and having sex. There's nothing but dark water around them. But a storm hits, someone falls off the ship, she is left alone, and the search for what happened to Patrick and the truth about their marriage begins. Oh, that sounds so good. I need to order this for my mum. Perhaps I will purchase it for her for Mother's Day, because that just sounds like such a ride, and definitely one to read when you are also on a holiday. Okay, there's a new book out by Eleanor Catton. This is Burnham Wood. Eleanor Catton wrote the very famous, huge doorstop-like book, The Luminaries, that one of my friends, Katie, read and loved, and I think CJ tried to read and hated. But this one is published by Granta and I think is equally large, perhaps not as long, but definitely chunky, and it sounds like it will be interesting if I read it at the right sort of time. I know it's going to get a lot of hype about it, so I'm waiting to see the reviews. It's being pushed so hard, particularly the States marketing for it seems really big, which is interesting. So like I said, so The Luminaries won a Booker, if that wasn't clear, and it is more about, it's like a sci-fi climate investigation type novel talking about the idea of guerrilla gardening. One I definitely think I'd be interested for Tom to read. So it says, Burnham Wood is on the mood. A landslide has closed the pass in New Zealand's South Island, cutting off the town of Thorndyke, leaving a sizable farm abandoned. The disaster presents an opportunity for the Burnham Wood, a guerrilla gardening collective that plant crops wherever no one will notice. But they hadn't figured on the enigmatic American billionaire Robert Lemone, who also had an interest in the place. Can they trust him, and will their ideas and ideologies be tested? Will they even trust each other? A propulsive literary thriller, looking at wit, drama immersed in its character, a constructed tale of intentions, actions, and consequences, an examination of the human impulse to ensure our own survival. It's blurred by so many people: Stephen King, Jesse Burnham, Catherine Rundle, Kieran Millwood Hargrave. Like, it just is getting a lot of praise in lots of different places, and I think it could be a fun one, as long as it doesn't bash you over the head with its conversations around environmentalism. So we'll be interested. One book that I know a lot of other people are really excited for that does pique my interest, although I haven't read their previous work, is Before You Suffocate Your Own Full Self by Danielle Evans. Danielle Evans wrote, oh my goodness, what was their short story collection called? Something in the House of Political Corrections, which I always meant to pick up but hadn't got around to. So this came out on the 9th of March, The Office of Historical Correction. So this is another set of short stories, I believe, from her. And I think The Historical Corrections was a novella with a story attached. I can't remember, but I don't think either of them are full novels. So this says, a college student forces herself to confront her feelings of resentment towards her privileged classmates following an unplanned pregnancy. A father's misguided attempt to rescue a gift for his adult daughter magnifies all he doesn't know about her, and two teenage girls flirt with adulthood that leads to disastrous consequences. This is based in a world where inequality is reality and the shifting terrain of adolescence and family are the most compelling forces. Her characters are witty, and utterly witty and wise. That was so many W's to say at once. In emotional immediacy, this prize-winning stories in Before You Suffocate Your Own Full Self offer a fresh perspective on race and class. So yeah, we'll be keen to see the reviews in for that one. And like I said, I'm often in a short story mood, so I could be partial to picking that one up. This is one I haven't heard many people talk about, and it's published by an indie that I also haven't heard of. This is called Footnote, and I think they're an Irish publication, and this is Wild Geese by Sola Emanuel. And so Sola Emanuel is a trans writer born in Dublin to an Irish mother and a Greek father. She went to university in Ireland and Sweden and got a master's in demography, which inspires her interest in the social society's outliers. She's written for The Stinging Fly and the Liminal Review, and she lives on Ireland's east coast, which you guys know I love Irish books, and sounds like it's going to be really good. It follows Phoebe Ford, who has a new home, new name, and is newly 30. She steps into an immigrant life in Copenhagen with her anxious dog Dolly. 3 years into her gender transition, she's learned to move through the world more carefully and is savouring the small moments of joy. A woman without a past can be anything she wants. That is until an unexpected visit from Grace, her first love, brings the memories of Dublin and the life she thought she left behind. This follows them across a single weekend as they rekindle their romance into something radically unfamiliar. Grace helps Phoebe navigate the jagged edges of migration, nostalgia, and hope. Oh, that sounds like it's going to be so good. I love a tight narrative, sometimes like in terms of time. And Copenhagen, Irish heritage, like so many ticks across this one, and I haven't seen anyone review it, so it's out on the 30th of March, like I say, from Footnote Press. Okay, a fiction book that I know is already sitting on my mum's bookshelf because she picked it up because she's a fan of this author. This is Nicole Flatterly's Nothing Special, again an Irish piece of fiction, and this is a coming-of-age story. It's set in New York in the 60s. 17-year-old May lives in a rundown apartment with her alcoholic mother and her mother's sometimes boyfriend, Mikey. She's turned off by the petty girls at her high school and the sleazy men she meets. She drops out and is presented a job offer, hired as the typist for the artist Andy Warhol. Warhol is composing an unconventional novel by recording the conversations of his alluring and famous friends. She's tasked with transcribing these tapes along several other girls. She quickly befriends Shelley and they embark on this surreal adventure on the fringes of the counterculture movement. She grapples with the thin line between art and voyeurism and determines how she will remain her own person as the tide of the 60s sweeps over her. So this is a coming-of-age story. Love the idea of that recent history setting, of fictionalising Andy Warhol and his friend group and his experiences in the counterculture movement. All sounds interesting. No, my mum will really like it. It looks quite short when I saw her pick it up, and yeah, very, very interested. A non-fiction book I've heard a bit of buzz about is Milk on Motherhood and Madness by Alice Kinsella. This is out on the 9th by Pam Macmillan and Picador. And this is a memoir of Alice Kinsella's experience with postnatal depression, I believe, or some kind of postnatal mental health issues. And it says she was in her mid-20s when she became pregnant with her first child, newly engaged, embarking on a life in an unfamiliar town on the west coast of Ireland. Into this warm cocoon, this big empty house would arrive a little baby, and soon her world began to expand and contract in ways she couldn't imagine. Her body struggled to recover, intrusive thoughts ran through the days and nights of motherhood, and she considered the experiences of her mother, her grandmother, and the generations of women who came before us, how this country treats mothers, and what does it mean to be forever tethered, forever in love. So this looks at the seemingly changed Ireland. In Milk, Alice draws for us the map of her motherhood, a reflection on the 9 months of pregnancy and the first 9 months of her child life. Warm, startlingly vivid and gentle, this book is a dedicated reflection to the gigantic change in body and mind and the painful confrontation of the politics of this country, so unsure of its women. Really interested in the circumstances that this is written in, obviously with the recent history of Ireland and the understanding of the reproductive justice that Irish women and people have been fighting for so long, and it's like a completely, well, not completely different, but it has a very separate history in terms of that compared to mainland UK, and I think it's really important that books like this are written about the experiences of those specific places. So yeah, I think I will look for that one on audio. It was out on the 9th of March, if I didn't say that already. And finally, a piece of translated fiction I've seen a few people talking about. This is out with Scribd on the 9th. It's called Blue Hunger, and it is set in China, I believe. So it says, in a skyscraper apartment overlooking Shanghai's blue-tinged, pulsating nightlife filled with rotting food, 2 women swallow yellow little pills that make all dangerous things feel safe. They're both running from a turbulent past. In abandoned factories and dilapidated slaughterhouses, they go to the extremes of pleasure and pain that they've never experienced before. Language breaks down and passion becomes consumption. This is a fever dream of a novel demolishing all taboos and wisely explores in wildly imaginative languages the twists and peaks of loss and desire. It's blurred by Jamie Attenberg, which sounds really interesting, and I'm keen to understand the cultural context this is published in. Obviously, it's about queerness and about counterculture and understanding that sort of alternative underground life that goes on in Shanghai that I think is not necessarily most obvious to Westerners looking in on the landscape of China and the landscape of that city. So I think that will be really interesting. Blurbed also by Rachel Yoder, who says that it's a devastating study of grief, rendering the South foreign, a gorgeous and grotesque understanding of lust and despair, backdropped with the writhing rhythms of Shanghai. So yeah, sounds like really, really cool and really interesting. I'm kind of into the cover as well. So those are the books I'm interested in reading in March. Let me know if any of those are also of interest to you, if you picked up any already, or if you'd like to add any to your TBR. Would love to hear from you in the comments or just to say hello. It's always nice to put faces or names to the people who are watching. So I would love to chat, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye. Bye.